on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Good morning and welcome again to America's Web Radio. And we have a very special guest on today. His name is Marshall Huckaby. And Marshall is one of the inductees into the Georgia Military Hall of Fame. And we'll be going into the reasons he was inducted for valor. He's a retired Army first sergeant, and between first sergeants and master sergeants, I don't know who had the most power. I know a lieutenant didn't have a whole lot of power compared to him. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Marshall, welcome to America's Web Radio, and thank you for joining us today.
And thank you for having me. Clarification on the first sergeant and master sergeant, both get the same pay. The first sergeant is a duty position, command as a command of authority type position. So that's the big difference.
Well, I was just a low-life E5. So
well, you had to worry about both of them then.
Yeah, that's right. Coming and going, and then we had a very small individual. I won't go into ethnicity, but that was the HNIC, and he probably carried more weight than anybody. I don't know. You know what I'm referring to, right?
Exactly.
Yes, sir. And so, I tell you what, I look back and I was not ecstatic when I went out to boot camp, but that, as it turned, I say boot camp, we didn't have boot camp, we had basic training, and I was, apprehensive when I went, but as it has turned out and I look back on things, probably some of the best time of my life, and learning things that I didn't know I had in me, and it was just a good experience. And as I've said over and over and over again, I'm flattered that Rick White and some of the other gentlemen that I've met and know that were officers, or General Dix, as a matter of fact. I'm sure you know him. And,
I do.
He's just a wonderful guy. And I appreciate the fact that they respect me as a veteran, even though I did not go to Vietnam. I was in the reserves during Vietnam. I guess there was a small chance I could have been called up. I think you and I both had the same MOS. I was 11B 40, and I assume you were somewhere along those same lines.
Yes, I was. I talked to other guys who say, well, I didn't go to Vietnam. I said, yes, but you're in the service, and you were the next number to be called, so it wasn't like you avoided that you were, here I am, send me if you want to. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, well, I got in my Texas Reserve unit, I got called up once to put down we didn't even put it down, to potentially put down a problem in my home city. But then I moved to Atlanta, and I went from the Guard to the Army Reserve in a sort of, they didn't know what the hell to do with it. I was in a civil affairs unit here, and they didn't know what 11 Bravo was. But I soon taught them. I said, just follow me to the IHOP and you'll learn.
I'll show you what to do.
Yep. But anyway, I want to talk about First Sergeant Marshall Huckaby and the service that you gave to the country, and also the fact that you were inducted into the Georgia Military Hall of Fame. You joined. Now, I don't find this strange because I know of a lot of folks that did something very similar to you. You initially joined the Navy. Why did you do that?
Well, I was in the Navy Reserve in high school, and upon graduation, I went on active duty, and I just stayed on active duty from 1961 to 1964. During that time, I was fortunate or unfortunate, maybe, to be involved in the Cuban blockade on the ship that I was in, and that's where I really, for the first time, saw the might of the U.S. military. I mean, there were hundreds of vessels in that blockade. But I got out of the Navy and got a job in Macon. I wasn't married, had no big responsibilities. I was working for a tax assessor, and every time I stopped at someone's house, they told me where I could go. And I was going from one side of Macon, Georgia, to the other side to a new job. And it was lunchtime. I saw the Army recruiter. I wheeled around and went in and said, if I join the Army, when can I leave? And the guy laughed. He says, you have all your paperwork. And this was on Wednesday. The guy said, son, if you have your paperwork, I have you other Saturday. I said, what do you need? He said, well, you're not prior service. I said, actually, I am. I've only been out 30 days. He said, I don't know where your records are. I said, they're in the building behind you at the Reserve Center. He called over. About an hour later, the captain said, are you serious? I said, yeah. He said, well, go eat lunch and come back. And I did. Wednesday afternoon, they swore me into the Army, and Saturday I was gone.
Wow.
Well, when I got to boot camp, I said, man, what am I doing?
Well, I'm surprised. I don't know how it works, and I would love to find out. So they sent you you had already gone through the naval boot camp, or I assume you had, even though you were in the reserves in high school. They still, I think, send you to some kind of training.
Well,
and
the big difference is the Navy, in this boot camp, the Army sent us more combat training.
Mm-hmm.
In training, I went in. I got out of the Navy as a sergeant. A second-class petty officer. So I went in the Army as an E4. I dropped the rank. I got to boot camp, and they made me an acting sergeant. And I didn't even finish boot camp. I had to go to Code of Conduct, bayonet course, rifle range, and one other class. And I'd been there about 2 weeks and graduated me by myself.
Huh.
Then I got orders, went to 25th Division, Hawaii. So here I am.
Gee, I didn't know the military could work that fast under any circumstance.
I'm not sure they can now, but they did then.
Well, they needed folks in Vietnam, I guess. Where were you stationed in Vietnam?
Well, I was in the 25th Division, and in 1966, the whole division went to Cu Chi, Vietnam. And that's where we were. We built a base camp, and I was the 25th Division for that first year. I was in something called the Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol, basically working out five-man teams. And to this day, that's probably some of the best people I've ever met in my life. And I look back on them with great fondness. In fact, on the 31st of July, we interred our commander in the North Georgia Veterans Cemetery in Canton. But we all agreed that he grew up on us, but he brought us home. And so my first tour was with the 25th and Cu Chi.
We talked about this. In fact, General Dix and I talked about it a little bit, and so many things that are not really acknowledged about Nam came out of Nam, and the phrase "I got your back, I got your six," so forth and so on, were really terms of and how important it was in Vietnam for somebody to be covering your back. And I guess, and the other thing that came out of Vietnam was and I don't think they really called it that, but it certainly has come out of the desert and the Desert Storm and desert, all of any of the things in Afghanistan or Saudi or whatever. But the term IED, and yet you all faced IEDs on every trail that you took, didn't you?
Yes, we did. We just call them booby traps, and they use explosives. Some of them were mechanical, like punching stakes and stuff like that. And the difference, ours were just booby traps, and those are explosive devices, and they are improvised. Even though the people we faced had the exact same thing, and just that terminology came out of Desert Storm.
Yeah.
It became popular or used a lot in Desert Storm.
The fact that they would use our sea ration cans to blow up and what were they called? Daisy cutters or whatever I've forgotten what the term was. But anyway, so we've also talked with many of the inductees and before we got involved with the Hall of Fame, the fact that the military, no matter what branch you were in, has to be, and this is what people that never served don't understand, but the military has to be the biggest fraternity and or / sorority in the world. And you can almost, it was like having General Dix here the other day. As a non-com, I was taught one way, and to refer to him as General instead of just Sir, he was sort of surprised that I wouldn't call him Richard. But, when I was in the service, you were taught, and you didn't call General, you called him Sir, period, end of story. And the respect, I couldn't believe the feeling in my studio with General Dixon here. It was just leadership was all over the place, and I was sort of in awe. He's just a fine man. So if you had one thing to say you got out of going to Nam, what would it be?
I would say, like you said, I got your six, and that means a lot totally. That's really a tactical situation. If you have like a 360-degree circle and you're at the zero mark, the guy behind you is at your 6 o'clock position, so he's protecting you. And to say, I got your six, you're telling a person, whatever happens, I'm with you. I'm your buddy. I got your six. And that's, I guess, what I got. And we learned that you can lie to your enemies, don't lie to your fellows. And if people said they'd give the shirt off their back to their buddies, they mean it. I mean, you're talking about 17, 18, 19-year-old, and sometimes a 15-year-old kids going from high school through some training, and then suddenly they're with a group of five or sometime in a lonely position, and you've got to depend on each other. So I think it's brotherhood came out of Vietnam, and it's alive down with other people. I have the opportunity to go to Fort Benning and meet some of the young people. And those young Rangers down there almost take my breath away. They look like they're 13 years old, but they'll have 4 and 5 deployments to Afghanistan. And just as nice and polite as they can be, but you give them a job to do, and dadgummit, they're going to do it. So I'm proud of all of them.
Yes, sir. We're going to take our first break. We'll be back with Marshal Huckaby, First Sergeant Michael Huckaby, retired Army. We'll be back right after this.
My name is Kyle Hayes, a motorsports student at Alfred State College. Every year, Alfred State students compete in the Great Race, which is a cross-country time endurance rally for vintage vehicles. As you can imagine...
Marshall, we doing okay?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
How's the voice doing?
These students to live their passion and promote the vintage automobile industry.
Well, you rest it while we're on break, okay?
.edu and search Great Race to learn more and help us reach our goal. Thank you.
This is Ron Camacho, host of the Business Hour, on Fridays from 10 to 11 a.m. Join me as I talk with passionate professionals on a program that profiles the best businesses, business professionals, business practices, and fascinating individuals to get an insider view of how America works. 10 to 11 a.m. on America's Web Radio.
If your health insurance premium is more than your mortgage, Ellen Deal with Ideal Solutions is here to help. Whether you're a small business owner, individual, family, or baby boomer, email MAGA45CAG@gmail.com and I'll respond with 3 easy questions to help you determine if you can get away from Obamacare. As a 20-year veteran of the insurance industry, I'm here to help with all your insurance needs. Email Ellen Deal at MAGA45CAG@gmail.com.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And we're back on America's Web Radio, and we have the honor of having First Sergeant retired Marshall Huckaby on the line with us. And Marshall was inducted into the Georgia Military Hall of Fame, and he served in Vietnam, and continually displaying selflessness and devotion to duty and bravery. He was twice decorated for heroism and was wounded 4 times. And are you familiar with Donna Rowe?
I am.
And we had Donna on, and I can't imagine 4 times being wounded in action. And Donna is just a beautiful lady, as you know, and looking up at someone like her taking care of you, you had to, like she said, some of the guys would say, ask, am I in a medical facility or am I in heaven? And those nurses and those doctors were, you had to feel like they were disciples from heaven anyway.
You did, and I guess the first time I really had to go into evacuation from the wounds, we're in a pretty bad predicament out on the Cambodian border, and I was wounded about noon, but lay out there till about dark before they could get us out. And they took us in, and we're talking about 10 o'clock at night before they finally got me, because I wasn't sure as bad a lot of guys was. So they put me in, put me under and worked on my arm and my head where I'd been wounded. Well, the next morning I woke up, we were all bandaged up. I was still dirty. I had red dust on me from the battlefield, and there was the nurse there. And when you saw them, you got the feeling that you're the most important person in the world, and that was the only thing they were going to do, to take care of you. Wow. And you're sitting up kind of feeling sorry for yourself. They're taking care of you. But when you get your faculties back and you look around, you think, man, those guys are in bad shape. So you quit feeling sorry for yourself and just try to get the heck out of there. But they were definitely great angels in green.
And again, we've mentioned it many times since we started doing this, and we support the Georgia Military Hall of Fame, and want to remind everybody that coming up November the 2nd is their big induction ceremony in Columbus, Georgia, and the public is invited. Rick White, Colonel Rick White, retired, mentioned to me that anybody that goes to it should bring their own box of tissues, because it's going to be a dripping event. There won't be a dry eye in the place. So I had planned on going, but some things have come up business-wise that I'm not going to be able to go. But I want to invite everybody else, and please support the Georgia Military Hall of Fame. These are the people that have kept us free, and we salute them every Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. With that being said,
I'd kind of like to echo that, if I may.
Sure.
What you said is very important. The people that are being honored, I was inducted, but when I look at some of the bios of the people before and those being currently inducted, I went, how in the heck do I even am allowed to be near these people? You do not know what the guy who lives next door to you, or who works at the body repair shop, or the older guy working produce at the grocery store, what they went through as 18, 19-year-old people. And most of the inductees perform their action, if it's for valor, is 18, 19, 20-year-old person. And so you don't know. We invite even an individual to come to the ceremony and see your fellow Georgians being recognized for their contribution to our country. So what you said is right. Please come down. We're glad to find your place to sit. You'll go away better as a better Georgian if you come.
You know, and I ought to get Rick and get him to tell me, give me a number because I don't know. But Donna and I talked about it, and General Dix and I talked about it. And I guess of all of the folks, and you were certainly you're certainly in there, but and unfortunately you got to know one of them probably better than you wanted to, but the dust-off pilots and the brave Huey pilots that went in after the wounded, they went through hell to get the wounded, and they, I think they all thought they were supermen and nobody could touch them. And in my opinion, there's two. In my opinion, the dust-off pilots, and also I have totally changed my view from when Vietnam was at its hottest, and you had the conscientious objectors that they would go, but they were forced to go, but they wouldn't carry a weapon, so they made them medics. And some of those guys did some of the bravest things. I wouldn't have had the guts to do what they did. And they were conscientious objectors from the standpoint of carrying a gun or trying to kill someone. But the lives that they saved by being medics, it's just an untold factor that they were some of the best soldiers that we ever put in the field. And the dust-off pilots, I can't say the word without wanting to salute them. They saved many, many lives. And
the people that aren't aware of what happened, how it happened, they say, well, he was in the helicopter. Well, if you're on the ground in a massive firefight, the helicopter coming in, he's a sitting target coming in. He's a target sitting there. He's a target at that very slow takeoff. So he's got a light flashing around here saying, "Carry on and shoot at me." And they were if you talk to them, they say, "I did my job." I said, "But man, what a job you did."
Yeah. And everybody was shooting at them from every angle.
That's right.
And we've talked about this as well, that we went into Vietnam just like we went into Desert Storm, not knowing we thought we were prepared. We thought we're the most prepared country in the world. We have the best everything. But the fact of the matter was, until the Huey pilots started getting killed as they sat in their chopper or waiting to do something, and like in Desert Storm, and we didn't have the Hueys or the Humvees. They didn't have the armor that they should have had for the IEDs, and the Hueys didn't have the plate on the bottom of them like they should have had going in. And I don't know offhand how many pilots were killed by ground fire that penetrated the floor of the Huey. But we finally geared up and put a steel plate in there, and it was amazing the pilots that made it through, and they went through some incredible fire, just absolutely incredible.
It's hard to imagine. I was fortunate or unfortunate, but when I went in, I had the opportunity to get off and lay down and hide behind something. They did.
Yeah, they were the sitting ducks or flying ducks, as the case might be, and I'm sure for the Vietnamese, North Vietnamese, anytime they could pull smoke and see a Huey go down, they were proud of themselves. And then and that was before the Hueys even had started going in as gunships. And
oh, that's right. Yeah, they were. It's like anything else, you make do with what you have, and those pilots and crew chiefs and the gunners, they made their own stuff. They learned to tie a strap from the overhead and hang their machine gun from that, so they got greater versatility. And the Army picked up on that, and they made something. But when you first get there, as you were talking, I thought about you were talking about preparedness. The way we prepared for the war we just fought. So in Vietnam, we were prepared for the last war. Desert Storm, they kind of had the residuals from Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
So they went from desert fighting to from jungle fighting to desert fighting. So you learn as you go.
And it takes us a while to gear up. And if I've ever been, the only thing I've ever been critical of the United States for, and unfortunately I've said this too many times, but was the fact that we had no real foreign policy, and to go into Nam and not realize that was jungle warfare, and then to go to Desert Storm and not realize that was desert, and I was down in Georgia at the base, outside of Savannah, and Fort Stewart, yeah. And I was there when they were painting all of the vehicles desert colors. They were taking the OD green and painting it the beige or brownish, tannish, whatever you want to call it, and getting ready to ship them back after they realized, gee, a real green vehicle on the desert really sort of stands out like a sore thumb. But we gear up, and the one thing I guess World War II did prove to us is that we may bend, but we don't break. And
that's right.
We're the most flexible. And if as a first sergeant you told a grunt like me, I want it by tomorrow morning, then I was going to be shoving it through your door at 2 o'clock in the morning, because I took pride in what I was doing, and if you needed it at daybreak, I was going to give it to you before daybreak. And that's still the attitude.
And people may talk about military people and their willing obedience to follow orders and things like that, or regimentation, but a soldier's not like anybody else who's not conscientious about their job. You turn something in, you want to turn it in as if your name is painted all over it. So that came from Marshal Huckaby, and I can depend on him. The next time I get one, I don't have to worry about it because he does a good job. That's what most soldiers want.
A little praise.
That's right.
We're going to take a break. We'll be back with Marshal Huckaby, First Sergeant retired, right after this.
You can keep your doctor, you can keep your plan, and every family will save thousands
Marshal,
of
you
dollars.
enjoying this?
I'm Ellen Deal, and if
I
you've
am,
been
that's
hurt
right.
by the
Makes
Affordable
me
Care
think a lot,
Act, you
but
can
it's,
email MAGA45tag
People that listen to it that don't really understand the military,
Small business owners, individuals, families, and
this
baby
is a good way
boomers.
for
Email
them to see just a guy next door talking.
MAGA45tag@gmail.com for
That's
3
what's
easy
good.
questions to
Well,
determine
it's,
if you can get away
you know,
from Obamacare. I'm
a lot of Vietnam veterans won't talk unless you were a Vietnam veteran and can compare notes. So that's why I always want to make it clear that I'm not a Vietnam veteran. I'm a veteran of sorts, but not a Vietnam veteran. But got a lot of friends and friends that died. So we're coming back. And we're back on America's Web Radio with our guest today is Marshal Huckaby, and we're delighted to have him on the air with us. And salute you for what you did during Vietnam. And I hope that, and it seems like it's come around, and a lot of the folks that we interview and that have been on have made sure that the folks coming back from Desert Shield and Desert Storm aren't treated the way that folks coming back from Vietnam, or even just serving during the Vietnam era, were treated, and it was unbelievable, because we had gone through World War II, we'd gone through the Korean policing action, and then we came back from Vietnam, or you all came back from Vietnam, and were treated like you were treated terribly, and anybody in uniform for a while was treated terribly. And you all have seen now that the folks coming back from Desert Shield and Desert Storm are treated with the respect like they should be, and that anybody that tries anything is going to be called out by somebody standing behind them. And it's a relief to know that our military is once again respected, not only abroad but at home, and that's the most important place, at home. I don't know of anybody that served, no matter where they were or what they did or what happened to them, didn't live day in and day out to be short. And for those that don't know what that means when your time is up and you're about ready to come home. And
yeah, I had a couple of years ago had I had a friend of mine ask if his high school grandson could interview me about Vietnam. I said, well, I guess so. And the kid talked to me, went through, and then he asked me, he said, when you're in Vietnam, how did you feel about the politics back home? I said, I did not know anything about politics back home. I said, you got to understand, we were 17, 18-year-old kids. The only thing I wondered about, what time's chow? When's mail call? Am I going to get paid on time? I said, we live from day to day, and I didn't learn about politics till I came home. And, we came back, and it wasn't very nice. And I said, I spent 3 tours. Well, after I retired in 81, for probably over 20 years, people I worked with, first of all, didn't really know I had been in the military. And they sure didn't know I'd been in Vietnam. And it wasn't that I was ashamed or sorry about it, but they wouldn't understand, so why waste both our time trying to explain it? And you're right, the Vietnam veterans, and each of us has tried to make sure that this new generation, if they go back, we're going to give them the best honors that we can. And if one is military or not, that's your obligation as Americans and Georgians to honor these young people when you see them.
I've made it a policy, and I don't fly that much, but when I do, and when I'm at an airport, I see a person in uniform, and they sit down to eat. I tell the waitress or waiter, that one's on me. And I have a son that's in the Air Force, stationed in Germany, and I hope that as he does his travels, that people treat him well and respect him for what he's doing for our country. And it looks like he's going to wind up being a lifer, and I hope that he's always treated well. And
that's a good point. I do the same thing when I have the opportunity of buying a lunch if there's one there. Both of my sons are military. My oldest son is retired now, and my youngest son was a commander in the Navy. They did tours in Iraq with the Seabees, so I would want someone to treat them with respect. You don't have to agree with their policies, but you got to agree that they did what they were asked to do, not just told to them, but what they were asked to do. And so you're right. If you have the opportunity, thank someone for their service. A lot of the young guys say, well, I don't need thanks. And I tell them, I said, that's not your choice. I said, I have an obligation and a desire to thank you, so just take it and say, well, thank you for caring. And that's what a lot of them do.
And that's what needs to be done. Thank you for caring. That's the biggest thing right there. Thank you for caring. And it'll come back to, I can guarantee you, the good feeling that you'll have of buying somebody in uniform a meal or drink or whatever it might be. It'll come back to you many times over, and you'll have a feeling of you're doing it for yourself, really, even though you're doing it.
That's right.
And
you have no idea where that person, whether male or female, is coming from, where they're going, and under what circumstances they're traveling. They may be coming on leave, or they may be going home for family emergency. So any little kindness goes a very long way, both for you and the person you are kind to.
Absolutely. So when you came back from Nam, what was your feeling towards the military / government's attitude towards Vietnam?
Well, since I stayed in the military, I kind of went, what was my next job and what was going on then. As I said, I did 3 tours, and after I retired, and I'm at my last tour in 1971, I came back to Fort McPherson and spent 3 years there. But it was in general, it was just life goes on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I didn't develop any feeling about the disrespect for Vietnam veterans until after I retired and started spending my time reading about it. Before then, if they didn't like us, I didn't care. I just let it roll because you had too many things to do. You had a job to do. You didn't have time to dwell on it. But after I retired in the later years, I thought, those people just did not know.
Right. Let me ask, on your resume or bio here, first AVN wasn't?
First Aviation Brigade? Oh, first one, AM?
It says AVN.
Probably the American Vietnam Medal. Let me pull it up and see. You mean service? Or?
Right. When you were...
I was in the first Aviation Brigade for a while.
Oh, okay.
I was in a unit on the borders, I said, and when I got out of the hospital, I got the opportunity to go down to an aviation unit and be the operations sergeant down there. I said, man, what's wrong with that? And I went down there, and I was only down there about a month. I got wounded and went back to the hospital, so it wasn't such a hot deal after all.
When I read the AVN, I thought of one thing, and that was not aviation. But anyway,
I was down in the Delta aviation unit as operations sergeant.
Interesting. Tell me, or let the folks that are listening know, when did you become a first sergeant?
In 1976, I was in Germany, and I was a master sergeant, and I was in a unit that was a provisional unit, so they didn't really have a slot or a position as first sergeant. But then the unit got reorganized and had a first sergeant position. So even though I was doing the command type job, I didn't have the diamond in my stripe to indicate the first sergeant. So then they appointed me as first sergeant.
Yeah, for folks that don't understand and don't know, the unit commander and the not only commander but XO and so forth and so on down the chain, probably they're like babies, and the first words that they learn or learn to yell are "First Sergeant." Would that be a correct statement?
Yeah, all the first sergeants like to say, the commander commands the company, but I run it.
That's right. That's right. And you know all the names.
Actually, the company clerk runs everything.
Well, I hate to say this, but I was a company clerk. And,
so you know what I'm talking about.
Well, you have access to 201 file, and
that's right.
You can bring some hurt down on a person if you wanted to, but you don't. And no matter what somebody's done to you, there's still a brother in uniform and or
Exactly.
sister. And everybody has one goal, and that's for Marshall to get back to his family and for me to get back to my family. And
That's right.
no matter, but you're right about the company clerk. He can sure mess up some leaves if he wants to.
But yeah, company clerk is valuable. I mean, if you get a good one, you don't let them go. And I had one a good one that he was applied for a transfer, and I approved it. And my CEO said, well, first sergeant said, he is so good. Why? How can you let him go? I said, sir, he's so good because we allow him to be good, and that's an honor for us. If somebody wants, we have good people that they won't take them away from us. They said, good point.
Well, when I got out of basic, I went right back to my unit in my hometown because we had been struck by a tornado that just devastated my hometown in 1970. So my job as company clerk, we had a thing called the strip. We didn't have liquor stores in my hometown, but we had them outside the city limits, and so one of my duties as company clerk was make sure the officers had plenty to drink. And I spent a lot of time going out to the strip to buy officers their favorite drink. But you do what you're ordered to do, And
I guess if people wonder about a company clerk and what they do, watch MASH and look at Radar O'Reilly.
Yep.
They will understand.
You're right. And like I said, they have the power of the pen. And they can make the orders go either way they want them to.
Exactly. And as fast as they want them.
Mm-hmm. And the other side of that is as slow as they want them. And it's
they would never admit this, but most company clerks can sign the company commander's signature better than the company clerk commander can.
Mm-hmm. But we joke about it, but like you said, MASH is a pretty good example of a lot of things. Some true and some not so true, but things have changed since we were both in, or particularly since I was in. And General Dix and I talked about this the other day, was that we were not to fraternize with officers and our general staff. We were NCOs, or enlisted personnel, and enlisted personnel didn't go out drinking with I did, but most of us didn't. But it was a different thing after the draft stopped and the lottery, and then after that just the volunteer. And we had, even in my first basic company, my platoon, everybody there was a college graduate, and that was almost unheard of back in the early 60s and late 50s. And things change, and things really changed for the military. And we have, I would say today, and I'm far removed, but we have not only the finest equipment, but we have the finest people ever to serve in the military, because they want to be there.
I'd tell the people, I'm not got a commercial going here, but if you live in the Atlanta area, North Atlanta, in April of every year, the Army's Mountain Ranger Camp has an open house. If you want to understand and see what your company has to offer, go up there, what your country has to offer. Go up there and you'll see some of the best young people in the world having the best equipment doing what they do. It's open to the public, so go up there in April of next year.
Yes, sir. With that being said, we're going to take our break, and we'll be back with Marshall Huckaby right after this.
The disease of addiction is a life-altering challenge.
not just for the person suffering.
Marshall, you feeling okay?
But also for the
I'm doing
family
good, thank
and
you.
friends who support
Yes, sir.
and love the one caught in its grasp. What should be the course of treatment? Who is the best person to render treatment? And what is the best place to go for the care that is needed? We know that you want answers to these and many more questions. Call 770-696-9862 and speak to a representative of the Atlanta Healing Center. They can tailor a program specifically designed to address the needs of the person suffering with an addiction, or give you guidance as to where that help may be found. Information is the key, and the trained staff at AHC is here to assist. If you wish, you can also get more information on the website located at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
You can keep your doctor, you can keep your plan, and every family will save thousands of dollars a year. I'm Ellen Deal, and if you've been hurt by the Affordable Care Act, you can email MAGA45CAG@gmail.com to see if we can help. Small business owners, individuals, families, and baby boomers, email MAGA45CAG@gmail.com for 3 easy questions to determine if you can get away from Obamacare. I'm a 20-year veteran of the insurance industry and here to help you for all your insurance needs.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And we're glad to have you on David's Pick on America's Web Radio, and we're particularly glad to have Marshall Huckaby, First Sergeant, retired from our great Army. He served in Vietnam, and I was just looking at your bio here, Marshall, and you were in probably, if I'm guessing right before they went to the camouflage ranking. Is that right?
Yes, we did. When you first went there, of course, the stripes were yellow, and so you whipped out a magic marker and made them black. Then later they, of course, the officers learned real fast to pull off their rank. If you're in the platoon, you know who the platoon leader is. He didn't need bars or on his helmet. And but yeah, it was the early days. We that unit I mentioned, I was the first time we had green fatigues, and just didn't blend well in the jungle. And our commander was arranged to get us what we call tiger stripe type fatigue. So that was the early days where everything was nice green and yellow stripes and white name tag.
And that standout white T-shirt.
Oh yeah. Of course, when you got there in that red clay, they weren't white very long.
You all changed them, huh?
That's right.
You always see the pictures in Vietnam of the enlisted guys with his dog, and you all learn too to wrap your dog tags. But
yes.
The guy without a shirt on with the dog tags hanging around in his hooch or close to his hooch and close to fire station or whatever, and then the reality, you talk to somebody, and I guess I don't want to say that World War II was clean or that Korea was clean, but they were certainly, there was still some, I don't even know what I want to call it, but there was
civility.
Yeah, civility. You're right. Exactly. You hit it right on the head. And my veteran Vietnam friends have stories that are just, you can't believe them. My platoon sergeant in basic training, Sergeant Polino, told stories of just, you couldn't believe that a human being could be that cruel to another human being, no matter which side of the fence you were on. And and then to come back and be called baby killers and all this kind of stuff, it was just deplorable, because I have this real thing about that. I'm not going to criticize you because I haven't worn your boots and been in your boots. And for any of our politicians to criticize anybody that's been in the military, if they haven't, well, I think that everybody that serves in public office and makes decisions on or for the military should have served. And
or at least understanding, how a 2-week course on what the military is. A while back we were talking about how you're treated coming back. Well, what they forget is how the guy coming, or person coming back felt. In World War II in Korea, the war was over and they came home on boat and they had 2 or 3 weeks transition time to decompress. My last tour, I was in the field. I was an advisor. I was in the field. And the helicopter landed and said, "Where's Huckaby?" I said, "Over here." He said, "Here's your paperwork. You got a 30-day drop. I can go home 30 days early." So I took those papers on the helicopter, my weapon, and my stuff, went to our team camp, said goodbye, got on the plane with my paperwork, my gun, and my stuff, and went down to where we out processed. I turned in my weapon and all my accountable items, and bathed up the best I could, and I went home wearing the same fatigues I had 2 days before. So
Wow.
One morning I'm in combat, and 2 days later I'm getting off the airport in Atlanta looking like a bum.
No. We talked about, or we kidded about a little bit, about the power of the company clerk. But the reality of it is, who was absolutely the most powerful, be it company level or even brigade level? Who was the most powerful person, in my opinion, or your opinion?
I would say the most necessary person to have a good one was the supply sergeant.
Well, I'd go one step above that. I'd go to the and sort of a supply sergeant, and in a way, but the chaplain.
Yeah, in saying that, and I didn't intend to overlook the chaplain, but I hold those in very special regard, and they're the sheepdogs. They're taking care of us. I have a very good friend who is now he's at the 10th Mountain Division in New York, but he was a Ranger at SF, enlisted man. He got out, and through whatever life changes, ended up becoming a minister and came back in, and he's a super-duper airborne trooper chaplain. And when he talks to them, they say, "Well, this guy's walked the walk. He knows what I need." And they're very, very, God sent them at the right place. And that's about the way I say it. They're God sent and they're needed.
And no matter what their rank is, they can outrank just about any rank.
Oh, yeah. They make things happen.
Yes, sir. I was, like I said, when I was finishing up AIT, and my hometown was hit by the tornado, and so I went to my CO and said, what would I have to do to get home and go join my unit? And you're not going to get out just for a tornado or anything like that. And you've got a week to go before graduation, and you're going to be here. And we just come back from our 2 weeks in the field, And so a friend of mine said, "Go talk to the chaplain." Or actually, it was I don't know if it was first sergeant or my platoon sergeant. Go talk to the chaplain. And I did. And interestingly enough, it's sort of like being sick and going to sick call. If you request to go see a chaplain, they're going to let you go see the chaplain.
Exactly.
And
you may have to wait and go see Inspector General, but you will go see chaplain. Here's the keys to my Jeep.
Yep. So I went and saw the chaplain, and he was very understanding, but said, "I don't know what I can do. Let me see, and somebody will get back to you." And I hadn't much gotten back to my platoon, and I got called, and I was on my way home, and it was like in 30 minutes, and I could barely say goodbye to my friends. It was 30 minutes to an hour, and I was out of Fort Ord and not looking back. But
yep, they're very indispensable. I mean, they're just, if you say the unit has a soul, that's who has it.
And you mentioned something else, is that a lot of the chaplains, they're not going to be carrying weapons, but a lot of them, just like you said, they're rangers. They're back in my time, Green Berets, and they were airborne. They went where the troops went, and they took care of the troops. And like you said, maybe it's their calling or whatever.
I mentioned a friend of mine's a ranger. Yeah, he was when he was in Italy. I saw a video of him. He said he talked to the troops about his jump. Then he got up on the podium, and he was their jump master. He was getting ready to jump, and he said, you're the best soldiers in the world, but you're soldiers for Christ. And I mean, where those people come from? I'm glad we got them.
And the other thing that I got to throw in that I always thought was, I don't want to say funny, but you can back me up on this. There were a lot of those chaplains that they had the patent leather boots. They wanted their jump boots to jump out and stop you and if you were walking down the street and you didn't salute them, even though they had the cross insignia on their collar, and you didn't take them seriously, they would stop you and make you take them seriously.
Well, they had a serious job, and they wanted to. They were, I guess, and they were a counselor, if you will, but they were also soldiers. They were officers. They when you went there, they are probably right by you or behind you, so they deserved it and they earned it.
Yes, sir. And it was some of them were very interesting, but. Anyway, I think we've given the public a pretty good idea of some of what went on in Vietnam, and particularly it's a team, and I guess that's the main thing from the time you go into basic until you retire or you muster out, whatever. You're part of a team, and you're a cog in the wheel, and every cog is important.
And that's true, and you never forget those people. As of today, I'm running into guys I haven't seen since 1966.
Wow.
You mentioned the pilot. We had the pilot who flew us on most of our missions. We often wonder what happened to him. And when I lived in Sonoma out by Peachtree City, it turned out the guy lived about 20 miles from me.
I'll be darned.
And I found him and let the guys know, and I had a 4th of July party. I had 50 people from all over the United States coming to see that guy.
Wow. He was that important to a lot of folks.
It was.
And Marshall, we're going to have to do what we do unfortunately too frequently, and that's put the plug in the jug and get out of here and get ready for the next show. But I do want to thank you so much for being on and sharing your story. And if you don't mind, I'd like to have you back on again.
I would, and I appreciate the opportunity for the people of Georgia to understand we are honoring their friends and neighbors and family.
Yes, sir. And everybody's invited to the Military Hall of Fame induction ceremony November the 2nd in Columbus, Georgia. And we hope a lot of folks get to attend. Again, Marshall, thank you, and I'll be in touch soon.
Okay, and thank you for caring.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Bye. You're listening to America's Web Radio, and we've got the Healthcare Insight Show coming up next.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.